Okay, let's talk about membrane. Membrane is also known as the plasma membrane or cytoplasmic membrane, and historically it is referred to as plasmalemma. Okay, membrane is a biological membrane that separates the interior of all cells from the outside environment, or the extracellular space, which protects the cell from its environment. Okay, so the membrane consists of a lipid bilayer, including cholesterol, that sits between the phospholipid to maintain the fluidity at various temperatures. Okay, so this slide shows the cell membrane. Okay, so if this is your cell, the most visible part is the nucleus. Nucleus is the center of the cell where genetic information are stored. Okay, then this is the cell membrane. Then outside the cell membrane is the extracellular fluid. Okay, so in a macroscopic view of a cell membrane, this is how it looks like. Okay, so in the cell membrane composes of carbohydrates, glycoprotein, protein channel, okay, globular protein. This is the glycolipids. Okay, you can also find surface protein, filaments and cytoskeleton outside the cell membrane. And then you can also find here peripheral protein. Okay, another integral protein, we have the alpha helix protein. Okay, so uh, a segment of this, you can find the phospholipid bilayer. Okay, so you can have, there is a hydrophilic head, okay, which is polar. It interacts with water molecules. It's a water-loving molecules, okay, uh, and it is electronegative charge, okay, and then the tail of the hydrophilic uh, part is what we call the hydrophobic tail, which is non-polar fatty acids. Okay, so it does not interact with water molecules. So sabi nila, it's a hydrophobic, so phobic, no, afraid of water. Okay, so this is how it looks like. So this is the hydrophilic head, and this is the hydrophobic tail. Okay, so this hydrophobic is non-polar molecule. So it does not interact with water molecules. The cell membrane controls the movement of substances in and out of the cell. So it is selectively permeable. So it only select substances that comes in and out. Okay, so specifically to the ions and organic molecules. Okay, so in addition to this, the cell membranes are involved in several cellular processes. Okay, so one of it is cell adhesion, ion conductivity, and cell signaling, and this also serve as the attachment surface of several extracellular structures, including the cell wall, the carbohydrate layer called glycocalyx, and the intracellular network of protein fibers called the cytoskeleton. Okay, so the next slide shows the composition of membrane. Okay, first and foremost, we have the lipids. Okay, so the cell membrane consists of three classes of amphipathic lipids. Okay, so we have the phospholipids, glycolipids, and sterols. So the amount of each depends upon the type of cell. So, but majority of cases of phospholipids are the most abundant and contributing for about 50% of all lipids in the plasma membrane. And then the glycolipids only account a minute amount, about 2%, and sterols make up the rest. Okay, so the phospholipids in the membrane, as I said earlier, contains a strongly hydrophilic and a hydrophobic tail. Okay, so the hydrophilic head is polar. So they are able to attract water because of its electronegativity charge. And then the hydrophobic tail is a nonpolar fatty acid chains. So these two ends of the phospholipid molecules are important because they maintain the cellular membrane structure. So the optimal and the energetically stable arrangement of lipid such that they form a bilayer with polar ends contact with the surrounding fluid or the extracellular space and ends in hidden in the interior membrane. Okay, so carbohydrates, as seen in the previous slide, is one of the composition of membrane. Uh, Predominantly, we have these glycoproteins, but with some, we have glycolipids. For example, the cerebrosides and gangliosides. Why is carbohydrates important? Carbohydrate is important in eukaryotes because this recognize, no, uh, cell to cell, no, and then this carbohydrates is also important in sharing information. And when, for example, viruses uh, uh, is being attached, okay, to the cell, they were able to recognize the host cells, okay, for example, the virus, and then bind to these cells, specifically to the receptor, and then later on it may cause infection. Okay, so one of the important composition in the cell membrane is proteins. Okay, this is typically around 50% uh, in the cell membrane are made up of proteins. Okay, so why is this important? It is important because they perform the biological activities of the cell.